10 News received an invitation to see something only law enforcement ever gets to see in person, the inside of a drug tunnel. Authorities rarely allow media access, but we were given a personal escort by the Mexican military.
Deep in the heart of Mexico, where luxury mansions and jungle hideouts weren't enough, powerful narcotics kingpin built secret underground bunkers, fortresses they believed were untouchable. But what unfolded inside those concrete walls wasn't the safety they expected. It was something far darker, shocking, and nearly unbelievable. Why would the most feared men on Earth risk everything, hiding below ground? Stick with me until the very end, because what was discovered will leave you absolutely stunned. Why narcotics kingpin went underground. Narcotics kingpin in Mexico built their empires on fear, wealth, and ruthless control. But the one thing they could never escape was paranoia. Every cartel boss knew that rival gangs were trying to kill him. The cops were closing in, and even people in his own group were betraying him. As governments used drones, tapped phones, and grew their intelligence networks, people who lived in fancy villas and big farms quickly lost the feeling that they were safe. It became dangerous for these men to live above ground. It wasn't just a strategy to hide underground, it was the only way to stay alive in a war where anyone could die at any time. There is more to the thinking behind these bunkers than just safety. Narcos didn't just want walls around them, they wanted to be in charge of all threats, real and imagined. They felt like they could not be hurt because they were in an underground bunker, as if they had turned the ground itself into defense. They were safe from helicopters and sudden raids inside these bunkers, where they could eat, sleep, plan, and even party. For a cartel boss, feeling like he had full power was more addictive than the harmful substances he sold. In a world where trust was impossible, it was the best thing that could happen. These hiding places were not built with simple tools. Cartels used millions of dollars to hire engineers who had been in the military, architects who were dishonest, and even mining experts who knew how to cut through rock and dirt without getting caught. Construction companies, some of which were legal and some of which were owned by cartels, were hired to build hideouts that could withstand explosions and flooding. As usual, thick, reinforced concrete, steel blast doors, and air filtration systems were put in place. Some bunkers were miles long and were hidden under barns, factories, or family homes. These weren't just places to hide, they were underground towns made by men who were at war with the rest of the world. This is best shown by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who is the notorious head of the Sinaloa cartel. Not only did El Chapo become famous for being powerful, but he was also crazy about tunnels. His safe houses were spread out across Mexico and were linked by secret escape paths. Some of these led straight to sewers in cities or out into the countryside. The police found secret tunnels with lighting and ventilation, closet doors that opened into ladders, and trapdoors under bathtubs. He was used to living underground, and he turned every house into a possible escape pod. El Chapo wasn't the only one obsessed with bunkers. It was a common strategy used by all harmful substance gangs. Investigators in Michoacan found basements that were built to protect against grenades and bullets. Entire underground garages were found in Tamaulipas, full of armored cars ready to be sent to battle. Some even had generators, kitchens, and lots of guns, which let gangs hide for weeks when the government cracked down. The patterns got more complex as the cartels got deeper. There was a secret arms race going on in Mexico, and each new find shocked the government more than the last. But there's another level that not many people know about. Bunkers weren't just places to hide. They were also ways for harmful substance dealers to show off their status. A big, fancy house was a sign of wealth. But a secret underground fortress was a whole new level of power. It let enemies know that you couldn't be hurt, and that they could hide you if they attacked your home. Stories about secret tunnels and vaults made people in the cartels afraid and respect each other. A bunker became the new throne for Mexico's criminal kings in many ways. Also, this obsession shows us something important about how the gangs thought about time. Villas and cars were only there for a short time and were often taken away or destroyed. But an underground system was fixed. It could last for decades, longer than the boss. That's why cartels put so much money into them. They were making safe places for future generations to live. The ground turned into a durable fortress, like the castles that empires left behind. Narcos didn't just think about the present. Caves were also a way to protect themselves for the future. One new point of view that is often missed is how these bunkers were linked to the management of the cartels. Not only were they safe places,
we are going on a journey deep underground at the U.S.-Mexico border into the tangle of tunnels used to traffic not only drugs but also high-level...
But they also became hubs for harmful substance trafficking. Shipments of harmful substances could move without being seen because tunnels connected stores to border crossings. Cartels made a system where hiding from the law was only half the story by combining security with profit. In Mexico's underworld, people didn't just try to stay alive. It was also a highway of harmful substance and money that no one could see. These weren't shelters. They were secret command centers with trap doors, armored rooms, and escape tunnels leading deep into the earth. Inside the hidden fortresses. When the cops and military found cartel hideouts, they were shocked by what they found below the ground. These bunkers weren't just rough holes or places to stay alive. They were built with all the comforts of a house in mind. The bedrooms had nice furniture, soft beds, and air conditioners that hummed in the stuffy air below. Some even had satellite TVs that let them watch foreign channels while the war was going on above. Men were hunted day and night, and these places made it hard to tell the difference between jail and palace. Police often found kitchens full of foreign liquor, gourmet food, and enough supplies to last for months. There were bottles of French champagne and cans of caviar next to each other, showing how harmful substance gangs used money to make a different world underground. Instead of emergency food, they ate like high-class people who were on the run. Cooks were sometimes sent down to bunkers to make meals, which turned them into secret restaurants for the powerful. Every detail showed the police that the gang leaders were determined to live a luxurious life, even though they were being surrounded. They took their religion with them underground, where shrines were carved into concrete walls and lit by lamps. Many of the rooms had Catholic pictures of saints, but Santa Muerte, the skeleton folk saint that cartel members worship for protection, stood out the most, as if death itself were their shield. These statues stood next to gifts of cigarettes, booze, and even jewelry. Fear and faith together showed a deeper side of gang mentality. They were trying to stay away from the law while holding on to the supernatural. In a dangerous world, faith became their last line of defense. It had better security than a lot of government sites. Dozens of TVs showed live feeds from cameras above ground in surveillance rooms. Military-grade radios were always talking, which let leaders see where the cops were at all times. Some bunkers had encrypted systems and thermal imaging equipment, which showed they had the same kind of means as paramilitary groups. These operations didn't look like hideouts to people outside the group. They looked more like basement command centers. Technology was their only way to get early warnings. The size of the problem shocked the police the most. Several bunkers were linked to complex tunnel networks that went kilometers under towns and across borders. These tunnels connected warehouses and safe places, and sometimes led out into remote farmland, giving people many ways to get away. Inside, cars, motorbikes, and even rail carts were found moving harmful substance and people without being seen. Communities didn't know that whole underground roads ran under them, making a secret map of power. Not only was it a matter of life, but also of taking control through infrastructure. The things that inspectors found in some bunkers were strange and unusual. Rare animals, like tigers and parrots, were kept as status symbols and lived in underground cages. The rooms were decorated with gold-plated sinks, marble floors, and mirrored ceilings, which stood out against the damp earth outside. Lots of money, stacked like bricks, was kept safe in vaults with thick steel doors. Weapons, diamonds, and records that told the stories of whole countries were kept safe in secret compartments. Each find was a picture of extra stuff that was hidden from the sun. The psychic power of these bunkers came from how they surrounded the people who lived in them. The people in charge of the cartels lived in safety zones that kept them from being affected by reality. Every wall kept them safe from the police, betrayal, and even time itself. They made countries underground, where they were feared and respected as rulers, and were fed, entertained, and worshipped. On the other hand, these cocoons turned into jails, keeping them in a fantasy world that made them less afraid over time. The false sense of safety was just as addictive as the money itself. Military researchers who looked into how these hideouts affected cartel decisions gave us a new idea. The longer a leader stayed underground, the less he knew about what was going on in the streets and how power was moving above. Some leaders lost touch with both allies and enemies because they thought their money and tunnels made them unbeatable. This pride often caused mistakes, like orders being delayed, threats being misunderstood, or not being able to change when rival gangs attacked. It was safe in the caves, but it was also dangerous to be blind. Bunkers also showed how harmful substance gangs changed the way wars were fought. Not only did they use weapons, but they also made places that were meant to be besieged for a long time. If an army came from above, cartel leaders could hide in caves that were reinforced and stocked with food and water. Police had to be patient, smart, and lucky in order to catch a boss. It was like a long game of chess. These fortresses changed battles into psychological warfare instead of open battles. Both the guns and the ground changed the situation. With each new finding, the mystery of how much more was still hidden grew. The police said it was possible that they only found a small number of these secret hideouts. With cartels spending millions on design, engineering, and security, it's possible that whole networks will still be unhacked. Some people said in whispers that new bunkers were made with escape tunnels that led into rivers or the ocean. The world below Mexico that we couldn't see was almost like its own country. The narcotics kingpin used the ground as armor. The Great Breaches. Under the ground, the game of cat and mouse between Mexican narcotics kingpin and police hit a new level. The Mexican Marines, the DEA, and top police units had to come up with new ways to fight in places no one thought possible as the cartels dug deeper. Standard raids were no longer possible because bunkers had doors made of steel, walls that couldn't be destroyed by blasts, and escape tubes that went under whole neighborhoods. These missions turned into a type of urban warfare, where troops fought enemies that were hidden below the ground. Each breach made them think of new ways to do things and keep going. There was a big change in 2007 with the Michoacan raid. Soldiers broke into a bunker that was set up like a military base, with grenade launchers, armored doors, and booby traps. The bunker wasn't just a place to hide. It was a fortress built to keep attackers away long enough for narcotics kingpins to sneak out through tunnels.
Discovery over the weekend in Reynosa.
Military personnel finding a hidden bunker that may have been used by the cartels.
The bunker's about 300 feet long, 20 feet wide, and 8 feet high.
Soldiers shot through steel walls and pushed their way into rooms full of guns and cash. Investigators were most shocked by how complicated the plan was, which showed that the cartels had engineers build war-ready shelters. After 5 years, the military used a new tool in Coahuila, ground-penetrating radar. With new technology, they could see what was under the ground for the first time without having to dig. Scanners found secret rooms buried under what looked like normal fields during a big operation. Inside, troops found bunkers that were fully stocked with food for months, monitoring gear and satellite phones. The findings showed that harmful substance gangs weren't just hiding, they were also planning long sieges, hoping to stay out of the hands of the government. Then there was Tamaulipas in 2014, where raids showed a scary new twist. Soldiers thought they would find armed fighters, but instead they found whole families living underground with narcotics kingpins. Next to gun stores and stacks of cash were built kitchens, playrooms, and bedrooms. The scene seemed like a dark take on suburban life, where kids grow up with armored doors and exit hatches all around them. It wasn't just a safe place for leaders to stay. The bunker was a whole underground community designed to make cartel life routine for the next generation. As the raids got worse, the security forces' moves became more like those in movies. Soldiers jumped from helicopters, smashed steel doors with explosives, and ran through smoke-filled rooms. An awful lot of the time, they saw narcotics kingpin desperately trying to get out before the walls gave way. The dark tunnels looked like scenes from a war movie when seen through night vision goggles. The shadows of fugitives racing through the narrow shafts sparkled like stars. Each raid wasn't just a fight. It was a show of chaos, damage, and people in need. A raid found a secret tunnel opening inside a church, which was one of the stranger things that was found. Outside, it looked like a quiet church with stained glass windows and a small group of people. A tunnel under it led straight to a gang bunker a few blocks away. Even experienced investigators were shocked by this mix of faith and crime. It showed how cartels became a part of everyday neighborhoods. It scared them to think that they could hide anywhere, even in holy places. A new idea that a lot of people miss is that these raids made the cartels give up their fantasy of being invisible. When aggressive military methods and ground-penetrating radar made their bunkers public, the myth of safety underground began to fall apart. These buildings were no longer fortresses that could not be broken into. They turned into traps, ready to be set. Every cave raid sent cartel boss a message. The military would push harder if they dug deeper. The tunnels that were meant to save them often ended up being the reason they died. Not only was it dangerous to break into gang bunkers, but you had to fight in dark tunnels full of traps and hidden places to hide. Why bunkers became their coffins. Cartel boss built bunkers underground to protect themselves from enemies and the police. They thought they were safe because they were hidden under steel, concrete, and secrets. But in the end, those very defenses often turned out to be their downfall. Once these bunkers were found, there was only one way to get in and out, which made it very hard to get away. The buildings that were meant to help them stay alive turned into cages of their own making. When the military found these hideouts, they took advantage of the fact that there were not many ways out. Soldiers would covertly close exit hatches, leaving no way for people to get out. The people inside were gasping for air because tear gas and smoke bombs made the air poisonous. Instead of shooting each other in public, cartel leaders suffocated in the dark and in quiet. Without notice, their own safety nets turned into tombs.
Costilla, a former police officer and a suspected Gulf cartel leader, is on the government's list of the 37 most wanted drug lords.
Other groups also learned how to take advantage of these flaws. Instead of going straight into a bunker, they shut off the tunnels and made it impossible to get out. As food and air ran out, those inside had to give up or die while they were still inside. People who got caught in the bunkers were only able to be killed by waiting. It went from being a great defensive work to a slow, suffocating nightmare. Betrayal made the story even more dangerous. Engineers who helped build the bunkers often gave police or other gangs information. Bodyguards who used to swear loyalty gave away exact locations when threatened or paid. Because of this, the bunkers were more dangerous to stay in than to leave. Narcos who put their trust in the people in their inner group were soon buried alive by the people they paid to keep them safe. In one of the scariest cases, a narcotic boss was trapped in a protected bunker that was full of cash worth $22 million. The fortune didn't help because forces were surrounding the building and pumping gas into it. He had to give up because there was no airflow and no one was willing to help him. His kingdom fell apart, and his wealth just sat there doing nothing in the corner. Before it was locked up, money was just a piece of paper that stood for power. There was a lot of irony in these bunkers. What cartel boss thought would keep them living cut them off from their families, their networks, and even their soldiers. They were hidden deep underground and couldn't see or call for help. If they were found, they also didn't have a way to get away. They were always suspicious and afraid that someone would betray them at any time. They felt even more alone in the bunkers because of their fear, which made them feel less like a safe place to be and more like a jail. The police learned that time was their best tool. They didn't have to use heavy weapons to break into caves. They let desperation do the work by cutting off the water, power, and airflow. Inside, the food went bad, the oxygen level dropped, and confidence fell. The toughest cartel boss, men who used to be in charge of armies, were reduced to coughing. Hungry figures who gave up without firing a shot. Secrets buried in the walls. The police expected to find guns and money when they broke into the bunkers that Mexican cartel bosses had left behind. What they didn't expect was how much work went into getting ready. There were lots of guns, many of them military-grade, stored in rooms made of reinforced concrete. RPGs, anti-aircraft guns, and rifles that were found could be tracked back to suppliers in the United States. These bunkers weren't just places to hide. They were hidden war machines. In one room, there were shelves full of coded ledgers. Each entry was carefully marked with names, numbers, and strange symbols. These weren't just any notes. They were full-on financial plans for how the gang would run. The police realized they had found the financial hub of harmful substance empires worth billions of dollars. Each and every peso was kept track of, from bribes to politicians to money for troops. It was like looking into a dark copy of a Fortune 500 business. Deep inside the bunkers, detectives found more horrible things. Rooms used for torture. It was quiet in these rooms because they were lined with steel and had chains bolted to the walls. They hadn't been left alone for long because of the bloodstains. For the cartels, these rooms were more than just a way to scare people. They were also a way to keep competitors in line. The frightening proof that violence was built into the way they did business was shocking. Not all that was left behind was meant to be violent. The expensive things stood out in a strange way against the blood and guns. In some bunkers, there was rare art worth millions of dollars stacked next to boxes of European liquor. Luxury armored cars were covered in dust in basement garages, their engines ready but not being used. These discoveries showed that gang leaders surrounded themselves with signs of wealth, even though they were always in danger. It was a strange mix of being scared and being proud. A network of pipes that went far beyond Mexico's borders may have been the most shocking thing that was found. Some of them were tracked all the way to stores in Arizona and California. Not only did these escape paths have air vents and lights, but they also had rail tracks for carts. Satellites and drones couldn't see the whole supply lines because they were buried in the desert. Harmful substance and money have been sneaking into the U.S. through these tunnels for years, but inside, not everything was what it seemed to be. Investigators found a huge underground tank full of strange fish in one bunker. Another one had a sealed music room with recording gear inside. Even stranger were the piles of rare artifacts that had been stolen from Latin American archaeological sites. These weren't just signs of wealth, they were also hints at the strange interests of cartel leaders. They made their bunkers into secret places that no one else should be able to see. With each new find, we learned more about the minds of the men who built these underground castles. It wasn't enough for them to just hide. They wanted to be in charge of every threat. The obsession with money was shown in the ledgers. The obsession with power was shown in the torture rooms, and the obsession with life was shown in the tunnels. There was a desire to show off wealth in everything, even if no one else could see it. The bunkers turned into symbols of fear. Investigators were shocked to learn that these bunkers were also used as a shadow economy. The coded ledgers showed ties to investments in legal businesses as well as sales. In secret, cartels owned construction companies, farms, and even shops in small towns. Not only did these bunkers hide crime, they also made it a normal part of life. A lot of people didn't see how it would blur the line between cartel and society. With AI tracking, huge bases in the desert, and camouflage that doesn't let drones see in. The race to build bunkers by cartels might be faster than government technology. The future of cartel bunkers. For a long time, gang bunkers were signs of untouchable power. But things are changing. According to intelligence sources, these groups are not giving up on underground warfare. Instead, they are making it better. Cartels are now testing AI systems that can watch what's going on above ground and record it all in real time. These systems can tell when cars, troops, or drones are coming up behind them, giving cartel leaders valuable seconds to get away. It's going from being a simple shelter to a smart castle. The ability to hide from drones is a big step forward. To hide from thermal imaging, cartels are adding layers of materials that block heat to their bunkers. Some are even hiding ventilation shafts so they look like natural land. This makes it harder for aerial scans to find them. Reports say that fake farmhouses or barns were made over the entrances to bunkers to hide them from the police. These changes show that gangs are learning from past raids and getting better with each one. Their hiding places depend on sneaky technology instead of brute force. Another important part is the high-tech airflow. Old tunnels often couldn't hold air, so they weren't good for hiding for a long time. Now, harmful substance gangs are putting in high-tech filtration systems that let dozens of people stay underground for long periods of time. Some designs are based on mine and military plans, which let air flow without showing where the openings are on the outside. Today, bunkers can be used for more than just getting out of danger. They can also be used as long-term command hubs.
To the people that are constructing these, simply don't do it. They're endangering people, and they're constructing these tunnels to effectively move drugs, dangerous drugs, into the United States.
On the other hand, the trend is going sideways. Many narcotic gangs are moving away from deep hideouts and toward border tunnels. They go on for miles, and some of them have rail lines, electricity, and elevators. They're more often used for hiding than for shipping. But the idea behind them is the same. Privacy underground. Tunnels, on the other hand, can be used for both hiding and keeping trade lines open. This makes it harder to catch them and makes them a lot more money. Both the US and Mexico are coming up with new ways to fight back. Satellite scanning used to only be used to find military bases, but now it's also used to find cartels. AI programs are being taught to spot changes in the ground's warmth or shape that could be signs of underground facilities. Patterns in the growth of plants are just one small sign that can lead you to a secret bunker. Because people are working together, gangs can't hide for as long. It's getting tighter inside faster than ever. Still, there is a lot of talk about what will happen next. Could harmful substance gangs build underground mega bases in remote deserts that are as big as military bases? It seems unlikely, but it's not impossible. With billions in income, they never have a problem with resources. It's only privacy that stops them. Others think we might see underground hubs that are self-contained and have homes, harmful substance labs, and escape networks all in one. If that happens, gangs would move from short-term hiding places to permanent underground kingdoms. Still, the duality stays. Every new idea comes with new risks. Keep these bunkers hidden better as they get bigger and smarter. A huge base might be able to handle an attack, but not a satellite scan. Even a high-tech air shaft could show signs of heat. The improvements that keep gangs safe may also leave digital or thermal prints that can be used to track them by the police. What was once a stronghold is slowly turning into a problem. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click on the next video popping up on your screen for more amazing content.